Good morning. My name is Ann Sy. I live in Chicago. I'm a primary care physician. My husband Al and our daughter Grace couldn't be here this week, but I feel like they're alongside me today. And I know they wish they could be here, but our family started the John Hauser Initiative Fund at UND in late 2021, following the death of our son John, who was an aviation student at UND. And really, in forming this fund, our goal is to help aviation students, wherever they may be at school in the United States, feel that they're not alone with any kind of struggle, any kind of health struggle. Certainly could be a mental health struggle. And I just wanted to see the show of hands in the audience, how many students are here today? That's excellent. So glad that you could be here. I wanted to introduce our panel today. I'm so glad that they could be here, and I'm happy to get the discussion started.
Hello everyone, my name is Lillie Bradford. I'm a senior at Auburn University and I'm the leader of Auburn Aviation Peer Support. This is about our third year in being an organization on campus, and I'm really looking forward to being here today.
Good morning. My name is Vasily Georges. I'm here representing Southern Illinois University, and I'm a flight instructor. I'm a flight student there and hoping to share some of my experience as a flight student and what SIU has to offer. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tony Harkins. I'm here representing Western Michigan University. I am a part of a committee setting up a peer support program, actually based off of Uplift at UND. And I'm also a part of the Aviation Mental Health Committee at the College of Aviation, and I'm really excited to hear what everybody else has to say.
Good morning, my name is Zoe Thompson. I'm a junior at UND and the current vice chair of Uplift.
Good morning, my name is Carson Calhoun. I'm a senior at the University of North Dakota. I am also flight instructing there. Currently, I am the chair of the program and will be graduating in December.
Great. As we know, among college-age students, there's been a high incidence and an increase in mental health conditions, particularly since the pandemic. And an NIH study, National Institute of Health study, actually shows that the demographic between 18 and 25-year-olds, which I would say would be college students, has the highest level of mental health identified conditions at, well, we would say just nationally, maybe 1 in 5 or close to 20% of adults have a diagnosable mental health condition. In the 18 to 25-year-old age group, it's 36%. And this was in 2022. So we know that, there is a prevalence. And the question I would have for the panelists is, what got you involved in the mental wellness program at your school? And maybe what was that moment for you where you decided, hey, I want to start being a part of this?
So a few friends of mine actually started the organization at Auburn, and through my voicing my own struggles in terms of mental health and in flight training, they really reached out to me and give me a platform to exercise my passion for mental health. I'm actually pursuing 2 degrees, one in psychology and the other in professional flight. So in order to exercise my passion for both, it really broaden my perspective of how many people truly are struggling and what I can do to help. So that's really how I got involved.
What I've seen at SIU is how so many people are involved. I'm very involved, and with that, I've seen a lot of burnout, and I don't think that's really talked about too much. With that being said, I know we have an open door policy of just having our upstairs, just open doors, whether it's CFIs, whether it's instructors, or whoever it may be, someone that you can talk to. And so with that being said, aviation is a very demanding sector that we have. And so with that being said, it's something that I think we should be talking about. That's why I'm here today. And with that being said, thank you. And yeah.
I got involved with mental health at Western because I've had some struggles with the FAA through some mental health issues I've had in the past. And I know I was not alone, and I know there are a lot of other people struggling, and I just want to make sure that everybody has their voices heard and that there's people out there who are willing to help and ways to get help.
I still remember when I when I went and toured at UND, and for like the orientation thing, Uplift spoke, and then right then and there, like sitting in that auditorium, I was like, I want to be up there one day. And I'm also pursuing degrees in flight and psychology, and this is just like the perfect intersection for me of my two interests. And then coming to UND, I just realized that how much of a problem there is in accessing mental health resources for pilots. And this was just the perfect way for me to get involved and for me to kind of give back to other students and let them know that they're not alone and that they have support.
For me, there was really a couple reasons I wanted to get involved with the Uplift program and be able to make a difference in aviation, mental health, and well-being. Growing up, I went to 3 different schools, always lived in a town of less than 2,000. My graduating high school class was 11 people at White Shield High School on Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. So being out there, I saw a lot of substance abuse in friends and really close family friends, classmates, people that went to my school, people that I cared about, people that I played sports with. So to see the substance abuse, the financial stressors, and the mental issues that came with those problems, that really struck me as a problem that I wanted to be able to help with. And then when I was a freshman at UND was when John Hauser's accident did occur. And it was at that point I knew I wanted to make an impact and that there was definitely a need for it.
Thank you, guys. Another question. So as a physician, I remember when I was in graduate school and medical school, the inherent struggles and kind of stressors that exist among medical students. And one of the things being kind of palpable is the competitiveness among a group of students who are high achievers. And although we're kind of going toward a common goal, there are different specialties, there's different levels of measuring competence and then getting into certain specialties is very competitive. I'm just wondering, within aviation, what do you see as what makes that area of training more stressful for aviation students?
I would say there are a lot of factors involved in this. Aviation is highly competitive, it's a high workload, it's constant stress, constant pressure. And in that, your training is very individual. So you are much more one-on-one compared to in a classroom environment when it comes to really any other degree. And in that, there's a lot of comparison. You're hearing a lot about the people who are doing really well and really fast, and you don't hear about the people who are struggling. So when you're struggling, you feel very isolated in that environment and you feel very alone. And I've seen through our peer support program, that's been the highest issue or struggle that our students have been facing, is truly just how alone they feel in this competitive environment.
Absolutely echoing that. When I started at SIU, I had my private pilot's license coming in. I had to do a transition course. So if we have 2 students starting at the same point, and all of a sudden one student progresses higher, and you keep on comparing yourself to that student, you feel that you're behind. And I've heard that across numerous occasions of how people feel that to that person next to them that they're behind, that they're behind, that they're behind. When in actuality, everyone here has their own lane, right? We're all trying to get to our own goal. And when you try to compare yourself to someone next to you or try to get in someone else's lane, I mean, that's where I feel that we kind of fall short. And so kind of individualizing yourself, taking care of yourself first, and then driving through that, that's how we can kind of come through together. And that's what I've seen And so just by talking to someone, whether it's your instructor, a teacher, a mentor, that's how we can progress together.
I'd also definitely like to echo that point. Really, at least for myself, it took a lot of learning that everybody's on their own journey in life. Everyone progresses at different things at different speeds. And especially myself being both a flight major as well as a maintenance major, it really shows there are people who are better at some things than others. And then at some other things, those same people who were exceeding very well have a little bit of trouble. And just making sure that, as stated before, you take care of yourself, you make sure that you understand everything that's going on with yourself, and that you can progress to the best of your abilities.
I 100% agree with everything that you guys have said. I've always thought that flying and learning how to fly is a deeply, deeply personal process. You might think it's easy, like you have your lesson plans, you go up, you check all the boxes, and you should be good to go, right? But there's so much mentally and emotionally that you have to prepare yourself with every time you go up and fly. When we're flying, if you're an airline captain, even if you're just flying with your friend in the plane with you, you suddenly have the mental pressure of being responsible for so many people's lives. And that's a lot. And I feel like it's not, talked about so much, that there's all these stressors and pressures. And in a collegiate setting, like, we're 18. You start out, you're 18 years old, you just got your ability to vote, and then you're flying airplanes, like you're responsible for other people's safety. It's a huge amount of stress, and then like financially, it's so expensive. Eventually, you'll be making good money once you get into the industry, but to crack that and to get into it, additionally, if you're like a first generation pilot and you don't really know what you're doing, even as someone who's not a first generation pilot, like there's just so much going on in the industry constantly. And I'm really glad that we're here and that we're finally talking about these things, because there's so many aspects of it that I feel like are not talked about enough, that all compile and produce a lot of stress.
Yeah, so not to beat a dead horse here, but I do believe comparison is the theft of joy. I don't remember who quoted that, but it's a very famous quote. It's very true and very prevalent in collegiate flight training. You see it pretty much every semester. There's going to be the students that excel and the students that fall behind, and certain students are going to excel during other semesters and they're going to fall behind in different semesters. Additionally, I think it's important to understand that as a first generation pilot, that's maybe not the standard what you think of when you hear a minority, but when you go to a large collegiate aviation program like UND, you kind of feel like that sometimes. So it's important to understand that when you go into these programs, when you go into an industry quite like aviation, where there's so many acronyms, there's so much specific lingo, and there's so many processes that if you've never done it before, you're going to need some sort of assistance or guidance. And that's where I think mentorship programs and peer support programs, things of those sorts where you can receive that guidance when you need it, are extremely valuable.
Thank you. We just heard on the last panel with the importance and the institution of peer support programs at the level of the 121, and I forget the different parts in aviation, but there are different smaller business groups, how important peer support is. And I'm just wondering, for those in the panel here who have a peer support program at your school, could you tell us a little bit about that, how that got started, your role in that? And then I think the second part of the question will be, what are typical cases that you might be seeing come to you at the peer support level?
So the way we got started was really through a few students who saw the need, and really through the inspiration of your son and through the inspiration of what y'all are doing at UND. There's definitely a need for it. And so 3 students came together, saw this need, brought it to our school, and through that conducted interviews and interest in people who were really passionate about it, and there are a lot more people who are passionate about it than they really thought. So now in our third year, the way that we conduct our operations is through a Google form where people can call us and we can call them if they really want to talk to somebody over the phone. A lot of people like to hide behind a screen if they're too nervous to come and talk to us in person. But then a lot of people also value an in-person connection, and really just through talking to somebody else about anything, that's how they receive care. So we also have in-person, we call them Let's Talk sessions, where a few peers will go to really a classroom, and anyone can show up to talk about anything, no matter what it is, and we'll just be there to help support them. And the biggest cases I would say that we get are really flight training, but also the college transition of just moving away from home. A lot of our program is out-of-state students. So the college transition as a whole, how to navigate the aviation industry, especially when it comes to that highly competitive and comparison environment. But really that isolating aspect of flight training is what we see the most.
What we have at SIU is a melting pot of everyone from around the U.S. wanting to achieve the same goal. And what we have is a lot of people like myself who, from high school, no one came with me. It was just paving the path. And so really just kind of coming in, you have no one to kind of bounce ideas off of, or it's like, hey, are you going to this? You kind of have to give that for yourself. So what we have at the airport is an aviation counselor, an aviation therapist that you are able to talk to. It's completely confidential. And so I've seen some utilization of that, absolutely saying what you're, I'm echoing everything almost. It's just someone that you can talk to, someone, whether it's aviation-wise, because aviation's hard, it's difficult. We literally saw yesterday, it's very unforgiving. And with that being said, it's whether it's college, whether it's personal, someone that you can talk to, someone on your side to help you get you through and to help you progress. And so I find that very, very helpful, especially at SIU.
I come from a similar background as far as I'm the only one from my high school who's here. So I didn't really have too much of a support from high school, and at the time we had not had much of a support system at Western. We're starting to develop a peer support program for Western based off of Uplift at UND, where it could be an anonymous peer support system where students can talk to other students about struggles that they may have with flight training or struggles they may have in everyday life, or even just like, hey, this test was really hard, I'm really stressed about it, I need someone to talk to. Currently, we are looking for a spot in our college to where we can have our base of operations, and we're really trying to start this process and get it set up and get it moving.
So I'll kind of let Carson handle more how Uplift started, but as for what a typical case looks like with us, everything we do is over a phone call because confidentiality and privacy and keeping the people that we help anonymous is kind of like the goal of our program, to make the people who use Uplift feel as safe and comfortable as possible. So we have a website, they fill out a form, they put in their phone number. That's the only information we really require. And then a text gets sent out to all of our peers. There's roughly 20 of us. And then the soonest available peer picks up the case. And you just speak on the phone. To just kind of, we're just there to provide a safe, non-judgmental space where the phone call is supposed to be as much of a natural conversation as possible for the person using Uplift to talk about anything that they have on their mind. A lot of our cases deal with stage check stress, or if they're having some kind of problem with their CFI, they just don't really know like who to talk to. We get a fair amount of those, or also some academic problems. I've also had some cases where it's just like friendship issues and you just don't really know who to talk to, and so they like that they can come talk to us. We don't know them, they don't really know us, and we're just here to listen and kind of provide any support that they might need.
So just echoing off of, as far as the cases that we often receive, it usually has to do with the stressors that are pretty unique to being an aviation student or flight instructor. So what those may look like is financial stressors, flight training stressors, feeling isolated in really any way, shape, or form, whether that's because you're falling behind in classes or you don't like your roommates. It really can look like anything in between, and it can be pretty subtle or it can be pretty extreme to where maybe they are dealing with these problems on a daily basis. As far as how Uplift got started, it really started back prior to the around COVID timeframe. We had the mental health task force, which was established by UND. It had a lot of Uplift or student leaders. With that, it then molded into the Uplift program. UND faculty was very supportive of it, and they knew that in order for it to be successful, it needed to be student-led. And so fortunately, at the time, this was prior to when I got to UND, there was passionate leaders who wanted to oversee this and be able to lead and create the foundation of it. Then when I got to UND in fall of 2021 and the John Hauser accident happened in that October of 2021, that was when the pace of the Uplift program really picked up. And then in November of 2022 was when all the training had been finalized, when the program had enough structure to where it could be officially launched. And then within the next year of that, the CFI program was launched under that Uplift brand as well. So we have CFI peer support for CFIs, and then we also have student peer support for students.
I just wanted to point out along that line, you know, as peers, you are just that. You are peers. Some of you are higher, you know, you're further along in your program. I know, Carson, you're ready to graduate, and Lillie is. And I guess in a way, there's a built-in mentorship in a way too, that to be in the peer support, do you need to be an upperclassman? Or is there a certain level at which to apply for these positions? Or is it anyone who's interested from the first year on?
For us, it's anyone that's interested from sophomore year on, just at least 1 year of experience in the aviation program.
No, absolutely that. We also at SIU have specific team leaders where if a student or someone has an issue with me as an instructor, someone else as an instructor, there's someone higher up that you can talk to talk about a specific issue as well. So there's availability with that that we offer.
It's great to have upperclassmen be mentors, but it's also good to have mentors down at the freshman, sophomore level as well. That way you can cover a big range. And I remember from my freshman year, the upperclassmen seemed very distant, kind of like, oh, they have everything together. Whereas freshmen you could more relate to, kind of as a close peer level.
Yeah, so with Uplift, we accept applications if you're a sophomore, junior, or senior, or above, just because we want the freshmen to kind of like get a feel for the university and be able to like share campus resources, and you're not really gonna know those things when you're a freshman and it's your first year on campus.
So just echoing off of that as well, it's all about perspective. So if you can think back to when you were a freshman going to a university, or maybe even a freshman in high school, when you would look up to the upperclassmen, even if it was just a sophomore, somebody who had been there a year longer than you, they seemed miles ahead of where you were, and it seemed like they had all the answers that maybe you didn't have at the time. As far as our CFI to CFI peer support, although that's a newer program, that seems to be a little more level, where the student-to-student peer support can really be anything from a senior mentoring or speaking with a freshman, potentially providing mentorship if that's what they are seeking, or it could be a sophomore and a sophomore.
One more question along the peer support programs that you all have. What would happen if a student reaches out and after a little bit of conversation you realize it's something more significant that they're telling you, maybe something about along the lines of, they've been maybe having some stressors for a period of time and it's mounting and, it's just a more severe tone to what's happening. Maybe they're thinking about, dropping out of school or self-harming, things like that. What have you been trained to do in those situations?
When we have a case where there might be more concern than just our typical cases, we have all been made aware and gone through what we call QPR training and suicide prevention training. And we have on our peer support organization, Dr. O'Keefe, who's over there. He's one of the psychologists in the Student Psychological Services, which all of our Auburn students have free access to, which is an amazing resource, and our students are learning more and more about that. If there's a cause for concern, we communicate with our other peers as well as with Dr. O'Keefe in terms of how to handle that and the resources that we know to point them to. If there's certain cases, it may or not be like domestic abuse, we know those resources, or if it's suicide, we know those resources. So we're trained on which direction to point them into, and really just to stay in contact with that person, not just give them the resource and then put them on their own, really follow up with them, and be a lending hand in any way that we can.
Well, if we find that something is going wrong or something's not normal, we do let our superiors know about the situation. How do we take care of it? What are next steps? Again, following up with that student, taking them to the aviation counselor that's at the airport. It's not an on-campus only thing that you have to then travel back and forth to. So having that available and having that accessible is how we combat that at SIU.
What we're planning on doing is, if we get a case that needs more support than what we can give, becomes more serious, it will be like Auburn, in the sense of we'll point you towards a resource that is more trained to help, and then just continue to follow up, making sure everything's still going okay with that student. And yeah.
So as Uplift, we have a couple of different policies in place to kind of help deal with this, but I will say that we haven't had a case which is so severe that we needed to deploy any of these policies. But so initially in our training, we were trained in like suicide prevention, and especially this year we did a lot of scenario-based training where like with between two peers you kind of like role play as a student that is maybe having suicidal ideation or perhaps is engaging in self-harm or just really at a very unhappy place in their life. And so we do get some kind of like practice between ourselves dealing with that, which our psychologist Sky Overbow oversees. She's in the back there. And then additionally, Uplift operates under her license as a psychologist. And so if I was on a phone call and the student seemed that they were having, like suicidal ideation, we have to break confidentiality when we believe that the student is going to hurt themselves or hurt others. And at that point in time, I would go ahead and let Sky know. I'd remain on the phone. Kind of like if it, just keeps getting worse. If they're like, no, I'm like really like about to do something, we notify campus police. And then hopefully they can locate and identify the student and prevent anything from occurring.
So the tool that we do use, we try to use an objective measurements so that we know when that threshold, kind of on a continuum like we talked about with mental wellness over the last day, when that threshold is hit and we do need to contact Sky. Additionally, if it maybe doesn't quite hit that threshold, we still have the option of not giving Sky any identifying information that was maybe released to us, but we can't communicate it with her. Maybe we want to get how that phone call made us felt off of our chest. Maybe we can learn from Sky, provided her insight, she can help us determine what maybe would have been a better thing to say or a better course of action for that conversation.
Yeah, sorry, what he's talking about, we use like the Columbia, I'm blanking on
Lighthouse Project.
the Columbia. Yeah, a Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. There's an app, it's great. There's like 8 or something objective things that you can kind of like look at and be like, okay, this person's like yellow, orange, red, and that's kind of helps us understand the severity of the case that we're dealing with.
Just following up on that, I'm wondering about other organizations or other resources on campus outside of the peer support program for aviation students that might be available, and if you're aware of, this might not be for everyone, but just if you're aware of students, even outside of aviation, that have used those things.
Just in terms of resources for aviation students, we have a new organization coming up about Auburn Fit for Flight, whereas peer support is more about the psychological aspects of it. This will be more about the physiological aspect of taking care of ourselves. That is, again, a need that's growing, and hopefully we can work alongside each other and address that need. That's really the main thing I can think of.
Yeah, SIU has an on-campus option for someone to talk to, whether it's someone that's an adult or someone that's a student that you're able to talk to. I know for me that whether it's a peer. I know that at SIU, like when you're a freshman, there's like an LLC, a live learn community, where people of the same major, of the same community, have someone to talk to, and you're all living together, going through it together. And so whether it's peer-led, community-led, or adult-led, there is someone that you can talk to make sure that you are able to get through whatever problem that you have.
To add on to that, Western does have a couple resources. We also have a learning community in the aviation dorm. Again, it's a place where students who have problems with like aviation classes or aviation-related issues with, say, flight training or, as I said, classes, maintenance classes, and things like that. You can work together with both peers at freshman, sophomore, junior, senior levels, as well as upperclassmen who may have taken the class before and can help advise you. In addition, we have great mental health resources at the Syndicuse Health Center, which provide 8 free counseling sessions that can be drop-in counseling or scheduled to students. So say you have an extra about 3 hours and you need to talk to somebody, that is a great place to just drop in and say, hey, I just need to talk to somebody. Yeah, I'd just like some help.
So at UND, our University Counseling Center is a phenomenal resource. It isn't located close to the aviation buildings, which we have Sky now, which is great resource. She's like our embedded psychologist at UND, so she's in our aviation buildings. You can go see her. Sometimes she has drop-in availability, or you can schedule an appointment. It's free service. She understands, like, she works with us as aviation students. She oversees Uplift. She kind of, she can kind of like specialize towards the aviation students, which is great. And then, like I said, the University Counseling Center, you have free sessions there, which you can go and use. And I think several people from the aviation department use it. I know some of our Uplift peers themselves use it, so it's a great resource.
What's great about Student Health and University Counseling Center located at UND is Student Health does all of the aviation medicals, so they're very familiar with that side of campus. And we have multiple aerospace medical examiners, so AMEs, located over there. With that, they are very good about doing preventative or outreaching to the UND aerospace student body. So usually once a semester, they host a wellness week where it's themed and they'll show up on campus in the UND aerospace buildings. They'll have all sorts of activities, free stuff for you to take, usually caffeine in some way, shape, or form. Additionally, the therapy dogs that UND gets to visit on a semesterly basis. You can catch them either out at the airport or in the aerospace buildings. I think lastly, the only one that we haven't talked about is the Green Bandana Project, which I think you wanted to touch on.
Yep, good segue, Carson. So when we've spoken about the Green Bandana Project at this summit and other places, people aren't always familiar with it. How did it get started? What is it about? And this really is for any school, high school, college level, graduate school, a program that I thought a video might give us a better understanding. So this happens to be University of Illinois, but I've gone online and seen UND has discussed this as well. They have that on their campus. And really it is the expense of having a bandana tied to a backpack where it's a visual sign that that person is knowledgeable in resources on mental health on campus. And that, in a tacit way, a student can see that and, maybe just tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I had a question for you. And not being a big thing about having to go to someone's office if that's a difficult thing for a student that's struggling. So if we could just play that video.
Without thinking, right? We can't exist without our emotions and things like that. So the reality is every one of us has some type of mental health.
I feel like the biggest misconception about mental health is that it is a small group of people that are deemed crazy, right? And this is so not true. Every single person could benefit from some kind of mental health resource.
You can't roll out of bed and just play a basketball game. No, you have to practice and prepare and work on things. It's the same thing with your mental health.
For individuals who are kind of nervous and don't know where to start, you don't have to take a huge step to begin with. Like, it's baby steps. You maybe reach out to someone that you are very comfortable with and start the conversation.
Don't let the issues that you're feeling just fester in you. Talk to your friends, talk to your teammates, talk to your coaches.
It's a bravery thing. You got to find it within yourself to be tough enough to be vulnerable with other people, because that's the only way that you can get help, and that's the way that you build your relationships and your community and yourself.
The Green Bandana Project is an initiative going around colleges to increase mental health awareness.
On our campus, we're training some of the student athletes to be resources for their teammates if they're struggling with mental health.
The student athletes that have gone through the training will have a green bandana on their backpack and will make themselves known to their teams.
We are basically a touch point for our peers that may not feel comfortable going to a staff member or a different adult on campus. They can come to us instead, and we can be a good starting point for them.
I really hope that the Green Bandana Project kind of just opens the doors to just get people talking about their lives, their days, their mental health, anything that's going on.
I think being able to be honest with each other on a different level and about something that is super personal is a really big deal. And I think if we're able to do that, it's going to only make us stronger as an athletic community.
At this point, I just wanted to open up to questions. If we have some on Slido we could take, certainly from the audience.
Yeah. So I have this question from airline pilots themselves. I'm interested in your guys' input on this, and I'd be happy to share what I think about it, but I want to know your guys' feelings on this. The question I've got is, should the FAA require organizations to implement these programs, peer pilot programs?
I definitely think that would be a good step. I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons why this stigma exists is because one of the bravest things that we can each do is ask for help. And I think if it required less bravery, if it required everybody being more vulnerable and expressing the fact that we're all imperfect and that we all struggle, and if that became the norm, then people would require less bravery to come and talk to people and extend help to their peers, because we're all willing to help, but are we willing to express the fact that we're imperfect and the fact that we all struggle too? And I think that step initially will really help other people be able to feel like they can express that they're struggling too. So I think if the FAA did require that, it broadens the conversation, it opens it up, it keeps everybody talking about it, and the more it's talked about, the more it's normalized.
Definitely.
I think it definitely should be at every university. If we're talking airline specific, everyone has a private pilot and then a commercial and then an instrument. We can all look the same, like in that aspect, but what else can we do to separate ourselves? That's where college becomes very demanding. I'm in this club, I'm in this club, I'm in this club. Now I need to sleep. Now I have homework. With that being said, there needs to be an outlet. And by having that outlet available for everyone will definitely help and ease a college mind, especially going to that next level, going solo as a first, as a pioneer in the aviation department or in the aviation family. I think that'll be very, very helpful.
As stated before, aviation is a very stressful industry. And if someone comes into a college knowing that there's these resources for students, knowing that they're not alone, knowing that there's people out there who are able to help and they have the resources to help, I think that would be great for incoming students to know, hey, you're not alone. There's people here who will help you. You're going to be just fine.
I think, yes, absolutely, it should be required across the board. It's been mandatory in Europe for airlines. I went to the asthma conference in Chicago in May, and there are representatives from Australia and New Zealand there, and they are light years kind of ahead in terms of mandating peer support and mental health resources for the industry. I think it is so important. I think that, to go off what you were saying, that if something's like mandated, like in terms of like legislation, it gives support. It kind of like, it's something that you can't ignore then because it's in our laws. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something that you can be like, oh, mental health, whatever. No, like, the support from the government would be instrumental in showing that it's here to stay. It's not something that we as, like, you know, the people here at this summit are talking about. No, it's something that the entire industry needs to address and accept as standard.
I will play devil's advocate. While I do believe it being a requirement would do more good than harm, I think that it's on the flight school and I think it's on leadership that they need to support and truly want that resource for their student. If they just see it as another requirement to continue operating or start a flight school, they're just going to look at it as another expense that they have to put resources towards. If that flight school sees that as another box that they have to check in order to continue operating as that flight school, they are going to take shortcuts and they are not going to give the students, the flight instructors, whatever that group is, the true resource that they need, where students and CFIs feel the support, they feel the resources and the funding and the time and the efforts being put into that program to where they feel confident and they can actually use it.
Yeah, to reiterate what Carson was just saying, to do a peer support group correctly and have it fully developed, it does take the administration and the students to really want to have the peer support program and would like to use the program to its full potential.
So I have more of a comment than a question, but I just want to commend all of you and your institutions up there for what we have done really in 3 short years with peer support in the collegiate environment. If we go back to our first symposium in 2021, I remember reading the ARC report from 2015 thinking, what is this peer support they're talking about? So that first symposium, we leaned on our industry partners and had a panel of all of the airline peer supporters in there, and all of the institutions up there now were present in that room, and that was really the first time we learned about the programs. And then to have student leaders come in and embrace that concept and help further development, kudos to all of us. I mean, again, we've come a long way in 3 short years. I also do want to support any of the administrators out here. The value at universities, we already have counseling centers on site. If you aren't partnering with them already, make sure you are reaching out and partnering with them. We have Dr. Oberbo, our embedded psychologist. She was instrumental. I was nervous to start a peer support program at the University of North Dakota and support it without a mental health professional there with them. Sky's positions is half supported by the counseling center, half supported by our college, but she's embedded and she's been, a godsend to us as we navigate these challenges. So if anyone wants to talk on the administrative side, how to support some of those. But again, kudos to the student leaders. Airlines, we're going to be in good hands. Hopefully these are the future peer supporters at the airlines in just a few short years. And again, just congratulate all of us in this room on embracing this concept and making it happen. At 3 years is very little time in academia. Not much happens at 10 years in academia. So great job to the peer supporters up there. Just wanted to make sure to get that comment out there. And then also a possible request. So our psychologist recently went through HIMSS training, because there are HIMSS psychologists. I encourage all the other institutions in here looking at supporting your counseling center staff to go through that training. And we'll ask Dr. Pavel and Dr. Danzig, maybe you could offer it more than once a year. That would be great, because September hits right in the start of the school year. So consider that. But thank you for the panel.
Do have a couple of Slido questions here. The first one is just a comment. Someone in the audience wants to thank you all for your transparency and your bravery being here today, and I just wanted to make sure that got through to you all. Several of the questions relate to peer support, but I think one of the biggest ones is asking about how your program deals with students seeking who maybe want to seek help but are fearful that seeking help will threaten the status of their medical. How do you kind of push through that barrier?
I think the biggest thing we can do is just keep the education going. I mean, even me and myself, I've learned so much about really the myths of when it comes to the medical and the AME and everything that goes along with it. So the more that we educate our students and our peers, the more we're all informed about it. And if a specific case comes up to us where they're worried about something, that's what we individually delve into those myths, because it's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to that.
Sorry, totally spacing. As far as what Uplift does and how it operates, we very clearly lay out our confidentiality statement right away when we get into the phone call with the CFI or with the student. So there's no questions as far as when, if ever, this would have to be taken up or reported to our embedded aerospace psychologist. So what that looks like is, as Zoe mentioned earlier, if there's ever a threat to themselves or an imminent risk of it. So when we lay that out right away, that kind of clears up a little bit of that gray area that people often feel the fear of. And then as far as trying to advertise Uplift, it's all about culture. It's about, like she said, about informing the student body. It's about informing the CFIs. And it starts at day one at orientation for the students coming in, because oftentimes those students, they go through the entirety of the program and then they become flight instructors. So if they have bad knowledge, they're going to pass it on to their students and the cycle just continues. So it really starts with getting out the good information. And then additionally, something that Sky and Beth, I know, have been working on is trying to get these positive stories and promote them. So that's why we are really pushing, if you have a positive mental health story where maybe somebody went on medical leave for a mental health reason and was able to come back and are back to flying status, please share that with us. We want to be able to share these stories. We recently had a student at UND who did come out with mental health issues. They spoke about it, they spoke up, they got the help they needed. It did delay their flight training, but now they are back with their first class medical. And this is a very big win for aviation and for peer support programs at the collegiate level. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to share the story. We want people to know that this is possible. Even if it does delay your flight training, it's better than the alternative of letting it build up and explode.
I won't lie to you, with these peer support programs, there is kind of the problem of establishing a trusting connection between ourselves and the people that we're trying to help. you won't believe the amount of times that I hear jokes about, oh, Uplift, like they're just going to report you to the FAA and they're going to take their medical away. Like, there definitely still is that, and whether or not they actually believe it or they're just kind of like making fun of something that they don't really understand yet, it's like kind of hard to say. So it definitely is, you know, a struggle to build that trust, but I think that transparency is a big thing for us. We just had our safety seminar at UND. For those of you who don't know that what that is, it's mandatory for every single person on the flight line. So there's about 2,000 people in the auditorium, and they have to be there. And then Carson and I presented on the process of how our program actually works to hopefully kind of like establish some more trust and just be very transparent about the information that the students or the CFIs give us, like what we do with that, and then kind of like how we protect their confidentiality, which kind of ties into, you know, not taking their medicals away.
So we have three questions that kind of hit on the same topic, so I'm going to kind of combine them here. These questions are asking about maybe systems or resources available for students who may be marginalized, non-flight students, or maybe even first-generation students that have no background in aviation. How do you address those unique concerns within a student population?
You mean on campus? Is that the question?
I would mainly say that's case by case, and in terms of how much those are really the struggle that they're facing with it. Where our biggest goal is to be a lending hand and a support in any way we can. We found through the last year, when we took out a lot of our more professional side of we're super confidential, we're super trained in suicide prevention, and we more presented it to our students as we are other students, we have struggled too, we just want to help you. That made it a lot more accessible, or made them feel a lot safer to come forward with whatever they're struggling with. And we saw a difference in the amount of people that came and the amount of vulnerability that we saw, because they just felt like they were talking to another peer, in terms of I'm talking to someone who, I don't know, is more professional, and there's that level of trust that's broken when you take it out of familiarity.
At the airport, about twice a year, we have an RSO fair at the airport, a registered student organization, to allow information to be shared and to see what's there at the airport for you to join and for you to feel comfortable in. So knowing what's out there, knowing where you can join, and to see peers going through the same thing is such a confidence booster, especially at the airport, to make sure that you feel welcomed, you feel included, and to help yourself.
We have something very similar. We have multiple diversity organizations at Western Michigan. Like we have PAPA, OBAP, and LPA, among others. And these organizations have tabled multiple times at the college. We also have an RSO type promotion event at the College of Aviation during Welcome Week, where all the students are more than welcome to come up to different tables, see what each of these organizations have to offer. And yeah, we really just get the name out there for all the different diversity organizations.
Kind of a similar thing at UND. We have a lot of clubs and just student support systems outside of Uplift that are kind of more designed to do outreach and like specifically kind of like target people in marginalized populations, like first generation pilots, people of color, women, et cetera, et cetera. But then as for Uplift ourselves, we try to get people of varying degree programs in Uplift, so that, like, you know, if a drone, like a UAS major comes and like wants to talk to someone, we have someone available for them to speak with that understands like their specific degree program. We also try to target people of different, just to increase the diversity within our program, so that if you want to speak with someone who looks like you, who is female, because we have had people say that, like, when they submit a form on our website, they say, I'd like to speak with a female peer, and we're more than happy to provide that kind of like specialized support to anyone who needs it.
So one thing I just want to state is that the Uplift peers, we aren't mental health professionals. We don't have all the answers. One thing that I'd say we're really close to being professionals at is resource professionals. And that's all thanks to Sky and her training. But all of the Uplift peers are very informed on what resources are available on campus. We have the TRIO program for first generation students. We have all of the diversity programs, the student organizations. Oftentimes, it's just helping guide maybe that new students, that's underclassmen who doesn't have that support network yet, maybe guiding them in the right direction so that they can go out on their own and build their own support network. They just need a little bit of guidance.
Sorry.
And something that I will say, if you do have a counseling center, most will willingly come visit any classroom, any student ward. I've talked with the international peer or international student board. I go to Aviation 101. I talk to all these people, and I think that's the biggest thing. Lean on your counseling center if you have one, and if not, reach out to one of those programs who do, or have one of those or have a peer support program, because we're willing to share resources, at least on our end. So.
At your universities, before you even start flight training, is there any type of discussion with flight instructors or anybody that talk about how hard it is? So at your universities, is there any type of, prior to flying, that discuss the rigors of flight training and how hard it will be? Some days you're the ace of the base, some days you can't find the airport. And that's gonna happen, to the extreme there. It's gonna happen because you are not gonna be perfect. So that way you understand, hey, some students, again, I'm teaching high school kids, haven't failed before. They have a bad landing or a bad maneuver, and then it's like, you gotta put that aside. So I guess before it starts building and having that issue that you're aware that this is normal, it's gonna happen. And then there's the tools to help you. So that way it's kind of lead turning the problem, I guess.
So the question is,
Yeah. Is there any type of pre-flight preparation for mindset, kind of like we saw last night, and we went to that, you can prepare yourself for these things, knowing it's going to be hard, knowing that I'm going to struggle, and that's okay. Is there anything like that before you start? Yeah.
At the beginning of every semester, we do have a safety meeting. And in that, we do talk about, the high standard that the program requires. But I do really think if there was a bigger level of transparency in the fact that there will be failures and there will be struggles, then that would help our students a lot in terms of when they encounter those struggles. They know it's going to be hard, but they don't know that everyone is going to experience the same struggles and that they will mess up sometimes. And I think being okay to make mistakes is a big thing that can change really in the industry. Not sacrificing safety though, just the fact that if people know that other people make mistakes too, that level of vulnerability will change a lot of people's struggles, I think.
I think one flaw to go off what you were saying is when we look at other people, when we look at people next to us and we just see an airline pilot, I think we saw during COVID this whole uplift in pilots and people going to flight training. We see the end result and it's like, okay, I can do it. But people don't see is what happens behind the curtain. How many check rides you have to go through, how the instrument, the commercial, the CFI, that's 2 writtens compared to 1 for just that specific one. With all these students here, it's, you look at your CFI and your double I, and he's working on his MEI, and I'm jealous, because I'm just a regular flight instructor. I want to get to that next step. So I think having that transparency in the very beginning is definitely going to ease that transition as a flight student to know what is out there, what has to be done. And I know a lot of people, especially my mother who's on Facebook all the time, just information gathering. What is out there, what are people doing, what different paths are out there, because it's not just, school, airline pilot, and that's it. There's other areas to aviation. There's the firefighting to seaplane to whatever. So knowing what's out there is what's the biggest goal. Information grabbing is definitely the biggest portion of that. And so having that availability, having that knowledge is definitely one way that we can change the perception of what going to college and college aviation and what that looks like.
I have not yet started flying. I have not yet started flying at Western Michigan yet, as I'm actually waiting for my medical to hear back from the FAA. That being said, I do recall from the multiple visits that I've been on here at the College of Aviation, as well as Aviation Outlook Day, which is essentially a big career fair for all of aviation. I would ask around saying, hey, what are some of the big major struggles that you'd have to overcome as a pilot? Or is there something you wish you knew before you started flight training? And time after time, the biggest response was, it's going to be hard. It's going to be something that people are going to progress at different rates than you are, and you will progress different than they are. So just continuing to ask, and to your point, to just gather more information and just learn as much as you can about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so to be frank, I don't think that we have enough in terms of kind of like just talking about the struggles that you will face. Like, it's not an if you face it, it's a you will face it. You will fail a stage check. You'll probably fail more than one stage check. You're going to be tested for the rest of your career on at least, like a yearly basis, if not closer to 6 months. It's a lot of pressure. Like, I can't think of that many careers where you're constantly being so often, like, recurrently tested. And then once you get, like, actually into industry, like, your family's depending on your income. Like, what happens if you, like, keep failing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that, and as Uplift, something that we want to work on is educating people more and just kind of giving a platform for there to be more conversations about the difficulties in aviation. And we're here to help you and support you through them. But I think that making people aware of some of the struggles that you're going to face and that it's normal. Like, I'm jealous. I'm not even a regular CFI yet. You know what I mean? Like, it's just everyone faces these things. It needs to be talked about more.
So I don't know if UND formally does acknowledge this or provide this information to the students right on day one, but I think where this information is relayed to the students is in the mentorship programs. I'm here speaking on behalf of Uplift, but I was a part of our Student Aerospace Advisory Council, which is just essentially UND Aerospace's student council, student government, if you will. And what they set up is a college mentorship program where upperclassmen mentor incoming freshmen so they can actually sign up for the program prior to even starting classes at UND. And they can utilize it throughout the entirety of their freshman and sophomore years. I was a part of that program for a little while, and I know quite a few people that are in that program. And when you are a junior or you are a senior, you have seen the insides and out of UND Aerospace. You know how this collegiate flight training program works. You know how to succeed at it, and you probably know how you can set yourself up for failure. So a lot of these mentors are very transparent and very upfront that if you want to succeed, this is what you need to do. There might be times where there are external factors that will impede that progress, but if you're passionate about it and you work hard, you search for resources and you ask for help when you need it, you can find success.